bishop finally leaves the board. Black recaptures, and the c3 square. It's all about that one. The black knight is about to jump in. It's going to be replaced by some very strong pawns if it gets there. And if you ever remove the black knight from the center of the board, white would be parting with his light squared bishop. This is a disaster on the light squares, and the white king just way too open in these scenarios. Yes, this might win a pawn for white, but the bishop drops back, the queen comes to the center, and checkmating ideas all over that diagonal.
So lots of landmines here. Need to make sure we don't step on those in this position. And this is one of those classic plenty of ways to go wrong, even though like an innocuous move could end up being a mistake if you're not careful in these sort of positions. And there's not just one way to make a mistake as well. There's many ways to make that blunder.
I'm loving Magnus's position here. You know, he does go for that trade pointed out, defends that a2 pawn, but the c3 square that we highlighted, that's a big one for the knight to jump on. Magnus captures with the queen, defends the b7 bishop, freeing up that knight to get on over to that beautiful post on c3. Currently, Hikaru jumps with the knight, with his own knight. Queen takes pawn, a threat on the board.
No, given a question mark, Hikaru's last move, but it makes a lot of sense. Tactically here, Magnus rushes in with his knight. Given a question mark, maybe it was better to start chasing away the white knight from f4, but now the key detail is that the white queen can go and grab a pawn since the white knight protects e2. No forks for black. And it feels like the position is starting to liquidate. Magnus not maximizing his advantage there. It's been very strategic so far. Hikaru hasn't been aggressive like he was in the previous game, so he's on the defensive, but so far he's holding, maybe, just about.
And Hikaru's eyes there darting all across the board, taking in all these tactics, wondering, does he capture the bishop first? Does he immediately go for queen takes pawn? Or will he have a more cautious, safe approach? I don't think that even exists in the position with the knight hitting the queen, the a2 pawn and the e2 pawn. We see the bishops come off the board, a flurry of trades. Magnus will pick up the pawn, eventually bring his rook, slide it all the way across, and put some pressure on the second rank. It's still advantage Carlsen.
Still advantage Carlsen, partly because the white knight is so silly on the edge of the board. Yeah. Needs a few more moves to get back centralized.
So where do we find the follow-up plan now for Nakamura? That is the question. The pawn on a2 is being hit. The white knight on a4 looks a bit silly, like you just mentioned, David. There are a couple of problems to try and solve in this position. It is very much savable, very much possible to turn it around, but I think we're also reliant here on a little bit of inaccuracy from Carlsen, who still appears to hold the upper hand.
And there we go. Hikaru goes and pins the black bishop. Very logical move. Also hitting black's a5 pawn. But how can Carlsen react? That's the big question. Does he have the opportunity to go and grab a pawn on a2, or does he have something even better?
Well, Hikaru's also setting up another trick, right? You're hitting queen takes pawn, but that knight that we were earlier highlighting is headed to a big square. Knight b6, knight d7. He's just pinned Magnus's bishop on f8. And I think he's coming for that bishop. That knight could jump there by a c5 or b6, threatening knight d7, asking some questions to Carlsen. What do you have in mind as defense?
Big pin on that black bishop. The white knight has to get into the game. It's that simple. Without the knight, you're playing a piece down. That knight might never get another opportunity.
Was looking for ways to maybe try and dissuade that pin with a pin of our own. If the knight comes into c5, for example, can you get away with playing queen a7? But the rook on f1 protects f2. So unfortunately, as much as I want it to be, that's an empty threat.
Magnus trying to break the pin with the queen trade. He's done the hard work. He's won a pawn. And I don't think Hikaru can contemplate that queen exchange. There we go. He keeps the queens on the board. Still, the white knight is headed towards more healthy pastures. Can Magnus deal with that? The white rook not able to get into the game. That's the key.
Yeah, if you pick up that rook and put it on the 8th rank, it's game over for Magnus Carlsen. But that's far, far away from that. This is a dance between the queen and the knight against black's king and bishop on the 8th rank. And Magnus Carlsen has one move to stop that idea, to stop that knight from coming into the game.
How do you invest that move? Maybe the black rook can improve. You can't move the bishop anyway. The queen is needed as a defender. He goes pawn hunting, very logical. Hikaru can't really save that pawn long term. That's another issue.
No, it's very tempting, of course, to go after that pawn, and it looks very vulnerable. The eval bar really wanted us to play rook d2 there to stop the knight coming in, a bit of a prophylactic move, trying to stop white's plans in their tracks. But this makes so much sense.
I think what Magnus is saying is, you bring your knight in, I'm just going pawn grabbing there. I'll have 2 connected passes. My queen does a beautiful job of defending everything on the last rank. We're going to see this being played out.
Right.
Is Magnus about to get greedy? That might just give Hikaru's rook the time to join the party to get into the attack.
Oh, maybe we show this, because big moment for Magnus Carlsen. He's got almost a 2-minute advantage, but it's not going to be straightforward to convert here. If he does take that white pawn, goes 2 pawns up, suddenly look at the bar, it would have shifted. We're looking at the green analysis board, the white rook shifts across, and if black takes a timeout now, for example, pushes a pawn, knight takes bishop is one idea, queen recaptures, and the white rook pins, wins the black queen. Game over. Hikaru with a huge counter-attacking idea on the board. Ooh, Magnus, instead he forced the white knight to make a decision.
He does not go greedy in that position with all the dangers that existed. Instead, we see a trade-off, and that's just Magnus with what looks like a very healthy extra pawn in the position. You know, you could also sacrifice it at a4, b pawn moving up the board, complete control of the d line, and with the knights gone, the attack looks a lot less menacing.
Hikaru hitting himself in the head just as he did yesterday in one of his matches. Look at this, a queen trade. You cannot get those queens off the board. That would be disastrous. He's setting a trap here. He's hoping that Magnus gets greedy with the black queen, allowing the white queen some checks. But Magnus, he's kept control so far. He wants those rooks off the board, all queens off the board. Either way, Magnus Carlsen would be winning. Any major piece trade gets him closer to his end goal.
It was such a well-laid plan by Hikaru. Grab another pawn, and I would have enough activity to take this game back to you. Carlsen, though, seeing exactly what was going on, chooses not to do that. And now this is proving very, very difficult indeed, because the pawns are rolling down the board on the queen side. This is feeling like Carlsen is going to be forcing an exchange sooner rather than later.
Ooh, this is flashy. The white rook cannot take that pawn. The black rook would come through to d1 and deliver some killer blows. If the white pawn recaptures, let's show the rook first. Rook takes pawn, there's a check. And if the white king shuffles to the side, checkmate on h1, game over. If the white pawn takes, Magnus there silencing the audience with a finger to the lips there. But pawn takes would allow the b pawn to run forward. Magnus looking very, very confident now. That might just immobilize the white rook, win the white rook. We might be about to see a decisive result.
That is an incredible move by Magnus. What a stylish way to finish this game off. And you know, that smile on his face, I think that wasn't just silencing the audience for now. He heard that applause in that last game. He knows the crowd is rooting for Team Falcons right now. This is his reply to that moment.
Wow, Magnus versus the Falcons. He's the last one standing in Team Falcons' way here at chess at the EWC. He takes a pawn, Hikaru Nakamura. It's a pawn race, but Black's pawn so much closer to promotion. He just needs one more piece to help shepherd it forward.
You absolutely love to see it, don't you? Magnus taking the time out to raise a finger to his lips for the audience. Queen comes in to try and shepherd the pawn to safety. That is it. We have the victory. Magnus Carlsen goes 2.5 to 1.5 up in this semi-final with a fantastic bit of play. Really, really great moves there in game number 4 of this semi-final.
Not the first time we've seen Magnus Carlsen put his finger on the lips. A sure sign that he's done before in the chess world. It's not only a statement to his opponent, but also everyone watching. This is Magnus Carlsen saying he is the best.
Silencing the fans there in the arena, the Team Falcons fans, and silencing Hikaru Nakamura's chances in that game. That was brutal technique. The pawn push to a4 that we showed there, the clincher, and Hikaru had to resign as the black queen was shepherding that pawn through. This last move, the queen coming forward to d3, about to cost white his rook.
It's an absolutely packed house here inside the arena, and they had a fantastic treat in store.